Wow, 5,000 subscribers. I can't thank you guys enough. I didn't think the toy reviews would take off as much as they did. Like, I was expecting a couple hundred views, maybe 1,000 if I was a good boy. But good God, y'all have been going wild. You can see the view count slowly rise with each video. Seriously, thank you guys. I've actually been struggling a lot lately with issues with work, general depression, and just a lot of crap. But thanks to the support of people like you, I have a newfound sense of motivation. Like, these videos aren't just for me anymore. They're for you too. And I want nothing more than to make you all happy. The best way I know how is to show you my pussy. Beast machines. It's an easy target for me, I know. But you know what? A bullseye is a bullseye, man. And Beast Machines was anything but a bullseye. I've looked at a few of the Beast Machines figures at this point, and I've got more lined up, and as you can see, it's been a wild ride. But if you thought these figures were bad now, the reaction in the year 2000 wasn't much better. Kids didn't want them, collectors were repulsed by them, nobody was happy. Ruined forever. At least until next year. All the line had going for it at that point was a really nice black Arachnia and some pretty good Viacons. In fact, one of the best figures for Beast Machines was Magmatron, who they brought over from Beast Wars Neo to give the toy line some bit of cred. So by July of 2000, we were halfway through Beast Machines and the ship was sinking faster than you can say, directed by James Cameron. So when you're halfway through a toy line and you've already released the figures for the main characters, what else is there to do? Quickly move on to the next line and just pray there's enough good graces left over to recover? Import some of the toys from Beast Wars 2nd and Neo to give the line some form of quality? Nope! We do a big toy. Yes, in the grand traditions of many a toy line, from the USS Flag for G.I. Joe, Tracy Island for the Thunderbirds, and Andre the Mammoth for Bad Dragon, Hasbro decided to have a big centerpiece toy to salvage the line. Now, it's not like this is new to Transformers. G1 had Fortress Maximus, the early 90s had G2 Megatron or Star Convoy if you were in Japan, and Beast Wars had Optimal Optimus, but it'd been a while since they had a really big figure like Fort Max. All those other ones are more akin to larger leader figures, nothing quite as wow-worthy despite how good those figures may be. Enter the Supreme Class. A brand new size class that would emphasize not only size, but also play features with electronics, lights, and other gimmicks. But they needed just the right figure to demonstrate this new size class. Much like how Siege Jetfire ushered in Commander class, or how Metroplex introduced us to Titan class. We needed just the right character to introduce this new class. And given both the main lead and the main villain had some pretty disappointing offerings, naturally it went to Cheetor. So Hasbro went all in on Supreme Cheetor. He was their new big toy, and they even hyped him up for the collectors, advertising the fact he was the size of a house cat, and that compared to his awful mega figures, the most show-accurate sculpt of Cheetor from Beast Machines. Yes, looking like the source material was something Hasbro considered a positive. So here he is. After much fanfare, here's the big cat that was going to save Beast Machines. We'll start this out in beast mode first because, well, you'll see why later. And just looking at him, he is pretty impressive on first glance. I don't have a cat on standby for comparison, and my neighbors didn't like it when I asked to borrow theirs, but he is larger than any other Cheetor I have. I'm not transforming Mega Cheetor for this video. You can't make me! Like, you see this thing in advertisements, it's certainly impressive, especially when the biggest Transformer at that point was Optimal Optimus. But it isn't too long before you notice some problems. Like, for example, it really doesn't look like Cheetor. And show accuracy was the big thing Hasbro were pushing with this thing, saying it was the most show-accurate Cheetor in comparison. Well, the face is a lot more smooshed than the show's design. No doubt due to the inbreeding that resulted in Beast Machines' designs. Poor guy is gonna have the lungs of a pug. His waist is noticeably a lot thinner. There are missing spots in a lot of areas. The spots are a darker shade of purple that looks almost black. His tail is this, more on that later. And the legs just look wrong all around. All jaggy and spiky with these weird fins. I know they're for the transformation into robot mode, but couldn't they hide those away somehow? I mean, Rat Trap had retractable blades. Surely they could have done something like that. Also, bro has one hell of a primordial pouch. He also has this tuft of fur on his back, where when you pull the ring back, they spike up, lights glow, and he does a roar. And according to the box, cool battle sounds. It's a pretty neat gimmick, though not accurate at all, given actual cheetahs do this more. Articulation-wise, the neck is reasonably flexible. It can't go up and down, but it can go, girl, and the jaw opens as you move it around, which I like. There's a bit of a joint in the waist for moving it inward, with a turning pivot as well, which is actually pretty cool. The back legs do have some jointage, but it's kind of awkward. You can't extend them to the side too much, which limits posability. Like, you can get some movement, but not a lot. And the front arms are awful. They only go 180, kinda. And it feels like it will break when you do so. The arm can rotate at the elbow at least, the singular arm. Said elbow can't even do 90. The other one can't even move up at all. More on that later. You can also kinda do a butterfly, but it's more akin to popping the arm out of its socket. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess. Like, you can get some posing in, but not a whole lot. Given the size, you'd think they'd use the chance for more articulation to really make this thing look amazing in photos, but I guess not. Oh well, it's not the worst cheetah mode ever, even for Beast Machine to Cheetor. I still have nightmares about the mega figure, but it's not offensively bad. However, this thing has got to transform. After all, it's the biggest figure since Fortress Maximus. What does the robot look like? Transformation is pretty dull. It's mostly in the body and hiding a lot of things away. It's basically a glorified version of Mega Cheetor's transformation, which I haven't reviewed yet, but it just popped out. Just exploded out. I wish I caught it on camera, but Beast Machines, oh my god. But regardless, he remains, you guessed it, a Tummy Time Transformer. And well, just look at him. This is a big figure. When standing, it does stand tall at around 19 inches. In fact, this for a long time was the second tallest Transformer behind Fortress Maximus. And if you really want a sense of scale, he's bigger than any of his fellow Supreme figures, Studio Series Bay vs. Devastator, me, and even some proper Titan figures just barely lag behind him. This is a tall lad. But why doesn't it feel impressive? Like, all those figures project a sense of scale and presence even if they aren't as tall. Why isn't he hitting as much? Well, let me answer that question with another question. Why did they pick Cheetor for this size? Cheetor, in any continuity, is a very lean and, well, not exactly mean Transformer. He's the youngest member of the team. He's Bumblebee if he was a literal pussycat. Making him giant size makes no sense because his design, especially in Beast Machines, doesn't lend itself to height. Like, if you want a comparison, using wrestling logic here, technically speaking, Andre the Giant isn't the tallest wrestler ever in WWE. That honor goes to the 7'7" Giant Gonzalez, 3 inches taller than Andre. But you look at Andre the Giant, the dude is an absolute unit. He looks like he could take a train coming at him just fine. From his caveman brow to his intense size, to even his one-strap singlet giving him a barbarian warrior look. Giant Gonzalez, meanwhile, has kind of a baby face, is a lot thinner to the point where they gave him a muscle suit to make him appear stronger. He looks like he'll fall apart at any moment in comparison to Andre. Even The Undertaker, who's a lot smaller than Gonzalez, looks more intimidating because it's The Undertaker, dang it! Sorry, I got derailed there, but the point is, Cheetor's design shouldn't be this big, especially with all the height in the legs. I guess this thing is a lot closer to the show model compared to his mega figure, so if you're the one fan of that design, you'll be happy. You know who you are. But there are still some elements that just aren't right. Like, what the hell is this sword? He had those twin scimitars in the show, but here he has this thing with stripes which makes it look like it should go on Waspinator rather than Cheetor. Also, in general, it looks very... Moving on! His chest is also ludicrously swollen, which my roommate and Cheetor simp Nebula Weasel compared to, and I quote, a gross himboification art. And with that waist, it's sadly accurate. And the head is, horrifying. I tried to think about what this thing looks like, and the only comparison I can think of is that one photo of Dean Norris smiling. it doesn't fit Cheetor at all. He looks downright scary, though you can at least open his jaw, which I'm a sucker for that kind of gimmick. Articulation-wise, the head can rotate, look up and down a bit, the waist pivot is no longer with us, the legs are basically unchanged, as are the arms. Let's go more in depth actually, because we have articulated fingers and thumbs, and this might be the first Transformer to actually have individually articulated fingers, which is actually pretty dang cool for the time. Shame they don't have a knuckle pivot, and they're of no use on this guy, because the hands can't rotate at all, so no sword play here. Not that he holds it particularly well. You can move the wrist down, however, so let's do that. What the hell is this? The box refers to this as an extending claw attack, which, sure, but it's less so the whole claw and more like just his fingers. Ugh, looks gross. And before you ask, yes, it is a pain to get him to hold this sword without this gimmick going off. As for the other hand, while it doesn't have anything dumb like that inside, the other gimmick isn't much better. He has a missile launcher in his hand, which you'd think would be activated by something simple like a button, but nope, you have to pull the arm back to fire. So yes, the entire right arm is effectively useless because of the gimmick. Why? What's the point of complicating a missile function like this? By this point in time, we had plenty of missile firing figures that didn't take up nearly as much space or sacrifice this much of the robot. Why would you render the whole arm worthless? Look out folks, here comes Cheetor and his atomic shove. We haven't even gotten to the worst part of this thing yet. You might have noticed I haven't done a whole lot of posing with this guy. That's because you can't! This guy is insanely top heavy and these grody chicken legs are not going to stand for it. Anytime you try, they immediately start splitting apart. It's a disaster. He has these rubberized feet, but they don't provide enough friction to stop him sliding. He has these heels, which I think are to provide support, but they don't reach the floor. You can twist and bend these things to your heart's content, and Cheetor will just fall over. And parts will fall off. You can't do anything with this guy in robot mode. It takes away any kind of playability or wow factor. Because you can't photograph this thing looking cool to your friends, he won't sit still for them. Not that he looked good to begin with, not even the box can make him look cool. It's one of the few robots I have displayed in his alt mode at all times, because at least the cat is okay. It's not great, but I can at least stand it, literally and figuratively. What a mess, one of the absolute worst Transformers ever. Now, personally for me, I do prefer this to the Mega Cheetor toy. Mostly because that figure's transformation will haunt my nightmares, and the Cheetah mode is at least better. But the thing is, Supreme Cheetor will always be the most famous failure from Beast Machines due to the hype, the big size, and the price. Supreme Cheetor was released to retail at $40 USD, which adjusted for inflation is about $70 now. Granted, it comes with more lights, gimmicks, and noises than a lot of other figures for the time and even since, but it doesn't have any of the functionality of other toys now or even back then. And word spread quickly about how bad this thing was, and no kid wanted it either. By this point, Beast Machines was already a failure, and this thing wasn't going to help, especially when there were other options for Cheetor, from his Mega figure to his Beast Wars figures, which you could still find lurking around. Retailers quickly started reducing the price, some slicing the price in half, and then some going as far as to sell this thing for $10, which, adjusted for inflation, is roughly 18 bucks. And yeah, at that price I can see some kids having a bit of fun with it, but it just shows how bad it was that they needed to do more slashing than in the streets of London just to get this thing off the shelves. One of the coolest Transformers ever assembled. Sure Sears, it's lies like that that resulted in your demise. The Supreme size class would stick around, and thankfully all the figures that were released after are leagues better, but Cheetor was not the right way to start. What a mess. But before we end this video, I wanted to show something else. This little guy. Surprisingly, in 2024, Hasbro opted to revisit the Beast Machines era with Legacy Cheetor here, which is crazy to me because I think Volkswagen likes to revisit their history more than Hasbro wants to revisit Beast Machines. And you know me, I have a soft spot for the core class, so if you're going to use this size for figures of more regrettable eras, I say go for it. And you know what? It's a simple figure, but it's charming. Coming in as one of the taller core figures, Cheetor here has a lot more to offer than his oversized cousin. Everything feels smoother, the elbows rotate properly, they can move more, the legs can move a bit more too. It's not perfect, but it's a lot more functional, and he can actually stand! Never thought that'd be a selling point, but here we are. And it's definitely the most accurate sculpt to the cartoon, which is sad to say the least given the competition. Sure, the detailing isn't fantastic, but for the size, I'll give it a little bit of slack. It definitely fits Cheetor more than this smiling freak does. The transformation is simple enough and sadly more complex than either bigger Cheetor figure, and thankfully doesn't result in things pinging off. It's not accurate to the cartoon, in fact it kinda looks like a reimagining of his Supreme self, but it's a lot more flexible in a lot of ways. Sure, his arms are obviously exposed, and sure the back looks a bit jank, but given they had to take the infamously toy-unfriendly designs of Beast Machines and translate it into a simplified tiny figure, I'd say it's pretty impressive. I've seen some people knock this figure online, and I don't agree at all. It's a simple little joy that fits with the core class message. Low budget, but still good fun. While Supreme Cheetor's job was to save a dying toy line and add some prestige back and failing miserably, I'll happily take this little guy over this big idiot any day. But what about you? How do you feel about Supreme Cheetor, especially in comparison to the core figure? Which would you rather have? And how do you feel about Beast Machines in general? Let me know in the comments and please subscribe.
Metroplex heeds the call of the last prime.
His arm fell off. Holy shit.